Hello, good evening or good morning. Actually, in this video, in this short video, I want to tackle a point that is quite fundamental for me as a teacher in the speaking course. This point is the language mistakes that we usually make while we're speaking. Despite the fact that we can correct these mistakes individually, I mean, if you had your wrong structure, your spoken wrong structure written down, most of the students are able to correct to correct the grammatical word choice, even the pronunciation mistake. However, while we're talking, maybe not so much fast, but what I want to say, while you're talking and you're trying to boost your fluency or to speak as easy as you can speak your mother tongue, the Arabic language, you make these mistakes and you're not 100% aware of them. So maybe if you have listened to yourself again, you can spot these mistakes and you're able to correct them. But as I said before, while speaking, you don't really recognize them. So let me share with you very few tips or very few steps that we can be following in order to somehow work on these mistakes, hidden mistakes. Usually, as I told you, they're hidden just while we're talking. So actually, these mistakes are known in the language teaching as fossilized errors. And by saying the word fossilized, do we mean here that these errors are a little bit inflexible, or they're not easy to change? We can say that these mistakes or these errors, you've been actually making them for a long time. Like you always say, for example, I am teacher, for example, I am teacher, without saying I am a teacher. Another grammatical structure, another grammatical mistake can be I have work as a teacher, for example. I have work as a teacher. You don't say I have worked as a teacher, or I've worked as a teacher, or I've been working as a teacher. So these are supposed to be grammatical structures. Other mistakes we might be having can be related to vocabulary sometimes. Like sometimes you choose the wrong word, especially when it comes to collocations. Like for the simplest example I can be given here is to make a mistake or to do a mistake. Some language users say, I do a lot of mistakes, and that's a mistake. So it's make a mistake. So that's another error. Some other errors are related to pronunciation. So we have three categories of mistakes or errors: grammatical, word choice or lexical mistakes, and finally the pronunciation slips or the pronunciation mistakes. If you usually say, I work in the field of teaching, you don't say field, you say field, for example. That's a pronunciation mistake. And it doesn't really matter how many times you're trying to correct these or to get feedback upon the language that you're having, or maybe the mistakes that you're having, you're still making these mistakes. So we need a strategy for our language users, or for the non-native language users, to help reduce and refine these mistakes. So as I told you before, the word fossilized here, that's the scientific name of these mistakes. They're supposed to be fossilized because they're inflexible, not easy really to change. However, it's not impossible. It is like we can be working on them. However, you need to be very aware that these mistakes have been there in your mind because you've been using them for a very long time. Maybe now it's the time for a change, but before this, you didn't even realize that you have got these mistakes, maybe because you didn't have any kind of assessment or evaluation, language evaluation, I mean. Anyway, so we've got 5 main tips that we need to regularly follow in order to refine, as I told you before, or reduce these mistakes. First of all, you need to learn the correct form. Whether it's a grammatical structure, whether it's a collocation, like a word that goes with a certain word, whether it's a pronunciation slip, you need to learn the correct form. And that's mainly the assessment that you usually get during the classes, your input and reflection classes, the daily voice note, the weekly voice note, and the weekly call. So the 4 services are there for you to help you figure out what kind of mistakes you normally have, because each and every language learner is a different scenario. You've got your own language register and you've got your own fossilized errors. That's why you need to get personalized assessment. So that's mainly the first step. You will learn the correct form from the different services as I just mentioned. I've just mentioned. Second thing is that I want you guys to use it in a controlled context. For example, if you have one fossilized error, which is I have working as a teacher, for example. So I have working as a teacher, that's a grammatical mistake, and you need to say I've been working, I have been working as a teacher. So you need to use this in a controlled context. I mean, in a sentence, all right, a chunk of the language, however, it's meaningful. For example, I would use the correct form. I would say, I have been working as a teacher for 5 years. And that's the controlled context that I mean. So if you have other mistakes like people is, I am engineer, other grammatical mistakes, you need to get the correct form in the controlled context or in a meaningful sentence. That's the second step. Third step, write it down. I do recommend having a notebook or a file or, you know, a separate piece of paper where you can take notes of your regular mistakes while getting or while receiving the continuous assessment, whether it's daily, weekly. You can be figuring out like, I have these mistakes, these are mine. You would know what kind of mistakes or errors you normally have. So third of all, I do recommend if you start taking notes of the correct form. You don't have to write the wrong form, because I don't want you to reinforce the wrong structure by writing it down. So never write the wrong structure. What I want you guys to do is to write the correct form in a meaningful sentence. So my sentence is, I have been working as a teacher for 5 years. I added the last part of the sentence so that it can be meaningful. So after writing it down in the separate notebook or the notebook that I use for mistakes or working on my mistakes, fourth of all, keep repeating it in a natural way. And by saying in a natural way here, I want you guys to use repetition or drilling. Maybe some teachers would be familiar with this expression or this terminology. Drilling is when you keep repeating a certain structure in order to make it familiar for your mind or for your brain to recall it again. For example, you keep saying, I have worked as a teacher, and your ears don't really feel like there's something wrong. That's what I want to say. Sometimes the wrong structure is there because your ears are getting used to saying this. You don't feel like there's something wrong, there's something that I need to fix. However, I want to work on the other hand, I want to work on the corrected structure. I want to get the corrected structure or the correct structure stronger than the wrong one, right? I want to reinforce the part of self-error correction, which is the last point. However, what I want you to do in the fourth step is that before you sleep and early in the morning, so you're doing this twice a day, you are repeating the grammatical mistakes, the pronunciation mistakes, of course, not the mistakes, you're repeating the corrected forms. You're repeating them in a natural way. For example, my mistake is, or the corrected form of my mistake is, I have been working as a teacher for 5 years. So before I sleep, I would take my notebook and then I would start reading them in a natural way. I mean, in a natural intonation. I don't want you to be monotonic, or maybe like you're just reading it for language improvement's sake. You're just doing it, you know? No, I don't want you to do this. I want you to be as natural as a language speaker, native language speaker. So for example, you can say, I've been working as a teacher for 5 years. I've been working as a teacher for 5 years. I've been working as a teacher for 5 years. So I'm trying to vary my intonation. I'm trying to act as if I'm speaking in a context, or I'm talking in a certain context. I'm trying to use this chunk. So try to vary your intonation. The more you repeat it, I don't want you to repeat it for several times a day. Just do it continuously, even if you're just going to repeat it one time a day, or but maybe one time in the morning, one time in the evening. However, I want you guys to keep repeating the mistakes. Of course, the more you work on your language, the longer list of mistakes you would have. So that's mainly a part of the language improvement. Keep repeating them in a natural way. Once you are now asked to introduce yourself, and then you start saying, I have worked. Okay, so now here you would stop, because your brain and your ears have been working, they both, the two body parts have been working on this form. So it would ring a bell. You would remember, like, there's something wrong here. And that's the very logical final step, which is the self-error correction part. When we get the corrected form stronger, when we get it, clearer than the other wrong structure, while you're talking again, your brain would stop and you would do the self-error correction part. So instead of saying, I've been working as a teacher for 5 years. So these are mainly the 5 steps that you guys can be following in order to correct, whether it's a grammatical, pronunciation, or even some errors that are related to words or lexical resources. Thank you so much for this, and wish you best of luck.